So we've got to be a little bit careful here because I am recording this audio on the night of Friday, July 18th. This video will probably be uploaded on YouTube tomorrow sometime in the afternoon, so that gives ample time for Patrik Allvin, Jim Rutherford, and the Vancouver Canucks to prove everything that we talk about in this video commentary wrong or right. If there is some sort of a transaction made and we upload this video on YouTube saying, hey, this transaction can happen, then ultimately I look like an idiot. But still, I'm willing to take that risk. I'm going out on a trip later this weekend, so I don't have the immediate access to my computer over the next few days. So I'm sitting here and reacting to the latest from Thomas Drance. This was posted on July 18th at 8 a.m. in the morning. What's next for the Vancouver Canucks after the Dakota Joshua trade? Cap space, centers, and UFA targets via The Athletic. Now, this piece will be linked in the description, but of course, it's The Athletic, it's paid for material. It is available for a split second, but you have to go out there and read it yourself with a subscription. So that will be available if you have said subscription. If you are like me, however, and you want to find a way to talk about the contents of this piece without showcasing the paid-for material, leave it to our friend, Canucks News Summaries, to go out there and give a summary as to everything that is talked about by Thomas Drance in the article. So again, always a big shout out over to Canucks News Summaries. They do some fantastic work, and they make our jobs of discussing Canucks-related ideas a lot easier in that respect. So, big shout out to Canucks News Summaries. Let's go out there and read some of what was talked about in Drance's latest piece. There's an entire section on gaining cap space. Actually, can we zoom in on that? Can we open the image in a new tab? Yes, we can do that. And then we can zoom in like this. Here we go. So, gaining cap space. The Vancouver Canucks had been looking to shed salary cap space since May, and efforts increased this previous week. Drance had heard repeatedly that Joshua and Blueger were the two trade candidates for Vancouver. The Canucks were not eager to trade either of them, but they felt that they needed to, in order to get the cap space to upgrade at center. Blueger is, effectively, off the trade block for now, as the Canucks value his penalty killing and reliability. So, penalty killing is going to be a constant idea when you talk about the bottom six Vancouver Canucks forwards. It's why the Canucks chose Drew O'Connor over Dakota Joshua. It's why Teddy Blueger is still being evaluated as somebody the Canucks want on their roster, not to mention the fact that Blueger can play center. Dakota Joshua has also played center in the past, but it hasn't really been too much of a deep dive with Vancouver. Like, Rick Tocchet never really had Joshua as a centerman in any form of the Canucks lines the past few years. So, penalty killing, center stability, that's why Blueger and O'Connor, for example, are still in Vancouver. Also, the fact that the Canucks just re-signed O'Connor recently, they weren't going to trade him. Joshua was signed a year ago, so there already was enough leeway, plus an entire season's worth of, let's just say, decent to subpar play from Joshua, which allowed the Canucks to make that decision. Blueger, though, he seems to be sticking around for the next little while, assuming the Vancouver Canucks do not make any significant moves just yet. Of course, if Vancouver goes out there and makes a big swing for a big money name, then maybe Teddy Blueger will be revisited in trade talks. But let's go out there and read this in regards to that same Joshua trade. Dakota Joshua sustained a lower body injury after returning last season. The Canucks viewed him as a player that required a fair bit of coaching and work in order to motivate him. Team sources insist that the trade was made reluctantly. And then heading over to his new team, Maple Leafs coach Craig Berube is a close friend of Tocchet's, and he also coached Joshua with the Blues. Drance then compares this trade to the Kane and Marchment trades, points out that the Canucks got a better return given the salary commitment was greater for Joshua, and his track record was far shorter. Now, you gotta think about the returns here. Vancouver acquired Evander Kane for a fourth, and then they traded Dakota Joshua away for a fourth. You can say, oh, well, it's Kane versus Joshua. Why did they need to get Kane if they already have Joshua? And I think that sort of comparison is unfair, because more so I think Evander Kane's roster spot in Vancouver in the top 6 was more so replacing what P.S. Suter brought. No? And I get you can say that Kane is making more money than Suter, but Kane is making it for only a season, plus he brings wing versatility and scoring. Now, you can talk about the penalties and the defensive irresponsibility, but I still do think that for Dakota Joshua, his role in the bottom of the Vancouver Canucks lineup will be easier to fill with a guy like Linus Karlsson or an Arshdeep Bains. You're not necessarily saying, okay, well, it's going to be Joshua out and Kane in. Kane is the Joshua replacement. I do think that both of these guys bring physicality, but Kane brings a little bit more offensively. And you can say that because Joshua really wasn't himself this previous year, there's room to doubt his capability of getting back up to the form that he had in 23-24. I don't make the rules here, folks. That's just how it is. Like, you can be optimistic all you want that Elias Pettersson is going to bounce back, that Dakota Joshua is going to bounce back. It's not guaranteed, and I think the Vancouver Canucks understand that these situations and the lack of any guarantee makes it a lot harder to fully believe in that plan going forward. Plus, they already made the Evander Kane trade weeks ago. So this seemed to have been the thought process heading into the summer here. It was going to be Blueger, it was going to be Joshua. One of the two. Joshua's making more money. Boom, it was Joshua over to Toronto. Let's go out there and look at some of the other notes here. The Vancouver Canucks view themselves as having $4 million in cap space. And they may be looking at having a 22 or 23-man roster to start out the season. $4 million in cap space, that's not a lot, I will say. There might need to be one more name or two that's swapped around in order to open up the necessary room for a legit top 6 center. But speaking about centers and candidates the Canucks could go out there and chase, this is what Thomas Drance goes out there and says about one Jack Roslovic. He corroborates Rick Dollywell's report that the Vancouver Canucks have been talking to Roslovic's agent. Drance believes it would be a 2-year deal, similar to P.S. Suter's original contract. So maybe 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 million bucks a year. The Vancouver Canucks have pursued Roslovic on the trade market in the past. They like his speed and positional flexibility. However, Roslovic is not viewed as a full-time center candidate, and the Canucks do understand that the player has consistency problems. I think that's a really good and fair thing to bring up with Roslovic. Yes, this guy has been inconsistent in the past. The guy was an unhealthy scratch for the Carolina Hurricanes in the most recent playoff run. I say unhealthy because he was injured. That's just kind of the fancy way to say it there. But Jack Roslovic is a name that Vancouver has been linked to. He was pretty decent with Carolina this previous year. He's been fine in Columbus the past few years. I don't necessarily think he is the most amazing needle mover on the market, but he's one of the only guys available on the market. That's the thing. Drance also writes here he doesn't view Roslovic or anyone else in free agency as the solution to the Canucks center problem. Adding a center will take a bigger swing, and it'll most likely occur via trade. So, with all this in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about these new Vancouver Canucks updates in regards to the Dakota Joshua trade, the thought process behind sending Joshua away, how Vancouver is going to navigate the remaining $4 million in cap space that they have, as well as Jack Roslovic? Again, if Roslovic is signed by the time this video is already uploaded on YouTube, then I look like the ultimate fool. But I'm willing to take that risk and just hold it out for a day, just wait and see, and try to pre-schedule a show here because I am going on a trip. So I apologize for any conflicts and whatever things I say end up not coming true or whatever. That's just kind of the nature of reporting on this kind of stuff, right? So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Vancouver Canucks and these updates. I hope you enjoyed these videos. And bye.